You ready? Oh my goodness, that is no exaggeration. We are a little over 36 hours from the finish of the Port Fairy Marathon 2023. Here I am, I've got the race number with my name on it to prove it. I was there, I did it, and I got the medal to prove it. As these race recap videos become more common, I want to make more of a familiar theme, and it just seems normal that I'd be sitting in the garden on a sunny day with my family here, and yeah, we'll be throwing balls for my family. So join me as we record, I guess recall the memories of yesterday's Port Fairy Marathon, literally hot off the press, because I feel like I've been pressed in between two slices of, I guess, marathon bread, because I am well and truly destroyed today. I feel like this might actually be some of the worst DOMs that I've ever had after a marathon before. It's just absolutely brutal. And oh, just as I put a clean t-shirt on, I've now got some of my family's tennis ball mud on it. So thank you, my family. Let's give it a minute before you throw the ball again. So I think in summary, the race was, I guess, a great encapsulation of almost the whole weekend. I felt like from start to finish, when we arrived on the Friday to when we left on the Sunday afternoon, the whole experience in Port Fairy was one of so much joy. It went even better than I could have imagined, quite honestly. All of those months of training that went into ensuring that the, I guess, race itself, but the whole weekend would be a success, really came to fruition. And for that I am so incredibly thankful, because as we know, marathons, for them to go right is almost near to impossible, because of the sheer amount of factors that play into them happening in the first place. You know, before we even get into what happens during a marathon, there's so much that has to happen in training for us to get to the start line in one piece. So incredibly thankful. But as I say, the whole weekend was a huge success. And when we arrived on the Friday, the sun was shining, and even though it was quite a long drive, it was about 6 hours from where we are currently down to Port Fairy. It was just beautiful to arrive there, and both Courtney and I, we took it in turns driving down there, and we felt pretty fresh when we got there, straight into the ocean, and it was just beautiful. Just a really lovely welcome, I guess. And we had a fantastic Thai dinner. I opted for the bland side of things, just because I know that my gut can get quite easily distressed. So I had a lovely Singapore noodles, vegan of course, and then started off Saturday with a lovely shakeout run with DK. I've mentioned DK in previous videos. A massive shout out to you, buddy, because you've supported me so much throughout a few of these races now, throughout training. And honestly, without DK's help, I'm not sure that this weekend would have gone as well as it did. So I had a shakeout with DK Saturday morning, ran through a little bit of the start of the course, the first couple of K. And then sort of Saturday was really a day of just making sure that I got as much rest as possible. But really it was an opportunity for me to try and avoid making as many mistakes as I could. For those of you that are, I guess, have frequented with these marathon recap videos before, you know that I have run into some issues that have basically been caused by mistakes, aka drinking like a litre of orange juice before the Adelaide Marathon last year. Just a terrible idea. I guess I'm pretty sure you can guess what happened there, even if you haven't watched the video. Anyway, I will link that above if you want to watch it. But yeah, I kind of wanted to avoid that kind of mistake, at least a self-inflicted mistake, as much as I could. So Saturday pretty much was a day of sleeping, of enjoying the sun but not getting sunburnt, enjoying the ocean but getting stung by a jellyfish, or just like stepping on a stone, anything stupid like that. So I did all that I could to avoid any kind of mistakes, but I have to say that my groin, particularly my left groin, kind of around my adductor area, was absolutely killing me. And looking back now, I think this was just marathon nerves. I'm not sure what it was, but there was just really a sense in my left hip, that whole area of just tightness, of just like, oh, something doesn't feel good down there. And it actually was like kind of pulsing, and it hurt me when I was laying down. When I was walking, I felt like it was just getting irritated, and in general it was just kind of a tough time. So Saturday was really, there was nerves, definitely, there was excitement, but more than anything I was kind of like, oh, my groin is hurting. And before we jump into any more of what happened on Saturday, I should take you guys back about 10 days to my final interval session of this whole training plan. So for those of you that don't know, I've trained for about 16 weeks in the lead up to the Port Fairy Marathon, whilst I've been working a lot of hours for my regional job to help me stay here in Australia. I've been clocking up like upwards of 130 k's a week, by far my biggest weeks ever of training for my 4th ever marathon, which would be the Port Fairy Marathon. And I had this goal of running a sub 250 marathon, hence the name of this training series. So throughout that time, I'd been doing brutal workouts all over the shop, Tuesday, Thursday, Sundays, usually harder sessions, and never really ran into any issues, any niggles along the way, apart from minor things. And it was only on my last session, interval session, about 10 days ago now, that was a 10 by 800, I guess semi-hard interval session, I guess around threshold, but it wasn't meant to be anything too strenuous. You know, we're 10 days out, not much fitness is to be gained. But during this run, I just felt something in the groin on my left side, just felt a little bit odd. I'm not sure what it was. I did run by a dog quite early on in the workout, not this dog here, another dog. And I felt like the dog moved a little bit weird, and then I kind of like was scared and maybe took a weird step, but I just wasn't sure that my groin felt great after that. And then a couple of days later, unfortunately, Courtney accidentally ran over my right foot. I was putting our nephew in the car, and Courtney accidentally left the car in gear, so when she started the car, the back left wheel of the car ran over my foot. Nothing was, I guess, amiss at all. I managed to pull my foot out quite quickly, and thankfully the nephew wasn't too, I guess, disheartened or sad to hear me shout the F word and then quite aggressively pull my foot out from under the car with both of my hands. He was pretty calm, which is good. I'm not sure that Courtney was so calm after she was quite worried about the damage she'd inflicted, but thankfully we were all good. So it's fair to say that in that, I guess, first taper week, things hadn't gone entirely well. My groin didn't feel great and my foot had been run over, but I was pretty sure at this point that everything was going to be okay. And it was on Saturday, marathon eve, laying in bed at around 8 in the evening, that I just thought, oh man, I need to forget about those things that have happened, because there's no way that I'm going to feel confident on that start line if I'm waiting for something to start hurting, like my right foot to just suddenly swell up and just not feel comfortable in my shoe, or just something to feel weird, and that left groin just to, you know, sort of go haywire and not feel good. So Saturday was really, I guess, a day of just trying to calm my nerves, and this is something that I practiced throughout my training block and throughout this whole training plan, to be honest. This idea of the central governor, you know, I guess kind of being up against the wall, me speaking to that inner voice and saying to it, no mate, I'm in control here, I'm the captain now. And I guess Saturday was a really good example of that, because I was able to actually just put that anxiety to the back of my mind and to know, hang on, I've run marathons before and I know those nerves happen, I know it turns my stomach in knots. It makes it difficult for me to, you know, eat all those carbs that I need to in the build up to a race. I'd also been drinking electrolytes for the last couple of days. I've been using BIX electrolytes throughout this training plan, and I absolutely love them. A massive thank you to BIX for supporting the series. They are one of our sponsors. And on Saturday, when I was drinking the BIX, it just didn't feel right in my belly for the first time ever, and I guess this is all just down to nerves. But thankfully, Saturday I was able to eat all of those carbs I needed, get the BIX on deck, and I just ate really, really plain foods. So if you guys are, you know, basically targeting a marathon of any time, if there's any time goal you're going after, just know that your belly will be sensitive, and it's just best to avoid fiber in the last couple of days and really just eat the plainest food you can. For me, that basically involved a nice avocado on toast on a Saturday morning. It was a pretty easy breakfast. We did go out for it, and I didn't really have that much control of portion size, but it was a pretty, I guess, generous portion, but nothing crazy. And then for lunch and dinner, I just had pasta with like a teaspoon of tomato sauce, so nothing crazy. But I knew that that for me would be a great amount of carbs, and I didn't want anything saucy that would, you know, basically give me any issues the next day, GI wise. So that worked for me. You might have your own sort of like recipe or your own sort of nutrition guide that works for you, but I'd really recommend just trying to dial that in beforehand. I've sort of got that to a T based on some long runs I've done earlier in the plan, but just ate as plain as I could, and Saturday night I'm so pleased to say that I actually got some rest, which was amazing. I wasn't really expecting it, but I slept from about 9:30 in the evening till 4 AM when I woke up, and I had my breakfast, which was just toast and banana. And the reason I'm going into so much of this detail, for any of you guys wondering, is because I feel like for my own sake, looking back, it's actually really beneficial to know exactly what I did. It's only the day after the race now, and I think, you know, to really just get as much as I can down is useful. But for you guys, I just hope you can learn something from this. I will timestamp when I start talking about the race down below, I guess in the scrolly bar thing, so you can fast forward if you're not enjoying this bit. But I had my banana on toast, I guess another meal that I'd practiced with and I knew sat really well with me. No butter, of course no substitute butter that I eat as a vegan, but no maple syrup, nothing like that, just straight up banana on dry toast, 2 slices. No coffee for me in the morning, because coffee, as good as the caffeine is, just coffee does generally just, I guess, speed up my metabolism. You can kind of guess what I'm talking about there, but I just didn't really feel like anything needed to speed it up. Quite happy with how, I guess, things were feeling down there, in the belly region at least. And yeah, so I had 3 hours till the start of the race at this point, so I just decided, let's just go back to sleep, see if we can get some rest. I wasn't actually able to go back to sleep, but it was just quite nice to just relax and just to know that my food would go down comfortably if I'm just avoiding any kind of stresses, or just, you know, I guess being anxious about anything. So I just laid in bed, just had my eyes closed with my alarm set for 5:30, and an hour and a half before the race, allowing me enough time to just do whatever I felt like I needed to do, which on the morning was having a shower, having a nice cup of tea, talking to Courtney while we got ready and left our Airbnb. All of that good stuff. I just felt like I needed to take that time to put on my kit and to adjust my race number that I put on my vest, and just taking that extra time to make sure I was happy with how everything was. Putting plasters on my nipples just in case I chafed. All of those things, just having extra time to do that, I know from experience, having not done it in the past, it just adds to stress. And I know that as soon as I start feeling stressed, I guess my belly just doesn't feel quite right. I start feeling a bit nauseous. I think all of those stresses ultimately play into your sort of mental energy that you have on the day. I think physical stamina is obviously crucial in a marathon, but also having the mental endurance to actually be able to just process what's happening. You don't want to be burning yourself out before the marathon, and I'd had a good sleep, but really, you know, it was only 6 hours. It's not like having a full-on 9-hour sleep, feeling, you know, really refreshed in the morning. I didn't feel like that. I just felt wired. So we drove down to the start for about 45 minutes before the start, and at this point I knew that staying warm was key, but actually just trying to put this groin issue to the back of my head, not thinking about my foot being run over a week before, all of that was so crucial. So I just got in a nice little jog. I took my rubber bands down with me, which I use to basically do hip adductor and I guess activation exercises. They're just cheap resistance bands. You can get them, you know, super cheap online, and they just do wonders. So I'd really recommend them in a sort of warm-up activation routine. I've struggled with my hips in the past. It was just really good to make sure they're firing on all cylinders, feeling good. So I did a little activation routine and caught up with DK. DK was running the marathon with me, and he also, you know, had his family there in support, and I had Courtney, so it was really nice to just feel like there was, you know, a nice little community of us getting it done together. So with about 10 minutes to go until the start of the race, I had just that precautionary toilet break. At that point, I basically knew that I was feeling good to get going and jog down to the start line. And as the timer sort of, I guess, came to the gun going off, I just felt like there was a sense of peace. And it was amazing. It was the first time I felt that before any race, let alone a marathon. I just felt, oh, you know what? I feel really good about this, and I just felt my heart rate just being a really nice, just steady beat. And of course I felt excited, anxious, nervous, all of those things, but ultimately I just felt at peace. You know, this is what I trained so hard for. And I will say that I think this is one of the first sort of I guess notable mentions here. I have to mention my coach in this video, Tony. Thank you so much for all your help. Tony from the Tony Smith Running Club. I'll link Tony's page down below, along with BIX, of course. You guys, honestly, if you have ever considered getting a coach, or maybe as a runner, why do you need a coach? I think it's just really important to think about moments like I had on the start line, where I just thought about all those conversations I've had with my coach, all of those reassuring messages I've had throughout the training block, all the confidence that Tony's instilled in me throughout, you know, a really quite difficult plan that he prescribed to me. A lot of workouts in there I didn't think I was going to be able to complete, that I was actually able to go on and completely smash. And I thought about all of that, and I thought, I can do this. And someone, aka my coach, has a great deal of confidence in me that I can do this. He set me a goal, and I knew I could do it. I really did. If all things went well, I had a good chance of meeting that goal. So on the start line, felt full of confidence, that great support, as I mentioned, from Tony. But there, I had DK, I had DK's family, I had Courtney, and it was just brilliant. A lovely way to start a race. So as we got off into the early stages of the marathon and of the day, because the sun was just rising at this point, we ran into some beautiful sort of meadows at the start of the marathon. So I'd say for the first sort of 8 or 9k, we were just sort of running partly along some road, but mostly just like a paved trail past these farmers' fields, and it was fantastic in those first 8 or 9k. There was a bit of support, but mostly it was just a time to just enjoy the surroundings. And for me, honestly, I was just lapping off my watch every k, just looking at around a 4:05 kilometre, so anything under that was ideal, but I didn't really want to be dipping under any sort of 4-minute kilometres at this point. So just tracking along nicely. I found a few people to run with, but mostly I realised that I'm catching people quite quickly, and I don't think there's going to be anyone for me to run with during this race. So it was around the 10k point that as we came back into town, there was a nice bit of support, and at this point I'd taken a couple of gels, and I really had quite a nice sort of sense of how things were going, how things were feeling. I guess the effort level of my marathon pace on the day, I have to say from the get-go, it felt easy. I felt in control. If I looked down at my watch, and I was using my, I guess, average lap pace to sort of see how, to monitor my effort on the day, really. Anything under 4-minute Ks, I knew to just dial it back a little bit and just to run at those low 4-minute Ks instead, which happened quite frequently. There was a few downhills on course that just sent me quite quickly, you know, into like the 350s. So I brought it back, and it was around the 11 or 12k point that a nice little group started to form behind me. So I was actually running with 2 or 3 other guys, and everyone sounded great behind me. No one was like breathing heavily, and cadence really was falling into line with me. So it was just a really nice little group, and it was actually quite a nice bonus because I'd run on my own for a fair bit, as I mentioned, up to that I guess first 11 or 12k, and yeah, it was just really nice to, you know, just I guess have a bit of camaraderie there. Even though I was leading the pack, I did feel like it was, you know, just a quite pleasant, I guess, distraction from things. So as we were moving towards the halfway point, I was keeping a track of my overall splits every 5k. So I was actually checking my hand where I had written my 5k, 10k, 15k, I guess, kind of expected times. And I was marking that across or against course markers for those distances. And I realised quite early on that I was 5k, I was about 20 seconds ahead. 10k, 40 seconds, 16k, which I had on my watch. I realised, yeah, I'm actually like a good minute ahead of schedule here, which was great, because at 16k I planned 10 miles in, I planned to actually up my pace slightly. So I was actually going to then be running at about a 3:55 to a 4-minute K. So I was just going to, I guess, pick up the pace just a little bit. But my plan after 16k was to not have too many Ks after the 4-minute K. So then I decided, okay, we're going to put the hammer down, but just slightly. And I told the guys I was with, just going to pick up the pace now, and they gradually just fell off behind me. But it was quite nice to know that actually we're approaching halfway, and I'm feeling good enough to pick up the pace. At this point, I wasn't feeling any kind of ache in my legs at all. I wasn't feeling any nausea, no gut issues. Mentally, I felt so strong. So as I just dropped off those guys, dropped off from the pack, and just put my head down and went forward towards halfway, I really knew that I was on schedule. So as we approach halfway, I don't know my official halfway split just yet, but I believe I went through halfway in about 1:26, which was bang on plan. So my target for this race was essentially a sub 250, but I knew if I was feeling good that sub 2:48 would be on the cards, or at least thereabouts. So going through in 1:26 and planning a negative split, I knew that, you know, sub 250 was looking good. So as I've gone through halfway, taking on gels, taking on BIX Hydration. So at this point I've taken on 2 BIX electrolyte tabs that I had dropped off in special bottles beforehand. I've never used special bottles beforehand, so essentially bottles that you can pre-fill yourself and submit to the race director to have them actually out on course. I'd really recommend doing this, and the sole reason is that of course there's going to be water out on course anyway, but if you can guarantee the electrolytes that you'll be using on marathon days the same as in training, that you know your body reacts well to, you can kind of, I guess, have a good idea of how you're going to be feeling once you take that electrolyte on. Flavors, all of that kind of stuff. I'd practiced with BIX throughout training, and having taken on my first BIX at about 11k, my second at the halfway point, I knew that I was feeling pretty good. And actually each time I was having a BIX, I was actually like, oh, there's a really nice hydration element to it, but actually mentally I just felt like it really was like almost a refresher for me, and that I kind of knew, yeah, no, this is really putting me in good stead. Essentially it almost just felt like a breath of fresh air, and just a reassurance, which is always good throughout a marathon, to be honest. I have had some gels in the past, so just like feel like I'm flagging a little bit taking on a gel, and then it must be a placebo effect, because I do feel like almost 30 seconds later I just feel great. But I have to say that halfway I'd taken on 2 bottles of BIX, I'd taken on 3 Morton gels, and I was about to take my 4th, and I was feeling brilliant physically, just no issues whatsoever. And that segues quite nicely really, because as I took my 4th Morton gel on, which was my last of my gel 100, so the non-caffeinated Morton gels, I took this on, and I'm not really sure what happened, because I was really early on in this race, and I knew, to be honest, that like I had so much more in my system, but I just felt really nauseous. And it was crazy, because I haven't experienced this in training. I've never really felt like you know, I guess deep nausea when I've been running, but I basically had a mouthful of Morton, and then I just felt really just like I'd been sick in my mouth, and it wasn't by any means anything subtle. It was like, oh god, that was really awful, and my throat was burning, and I just thought, oh, I'll just give it another go. But as soon as I put the Morton in my mouth, I just couldn't swallow it. And now you have to realise, like, this is literally 90 minutes into an endeavour that I plan to last about 2 hours 50, so like by no means are we anywhere near the finish. And I realised if I can't take this Morton gel on, that's basically the end of my carbohydrates, and I've still got so far to run. I've still got half a marathon to run. I can't really do that without any carbs. So that point was a little bit distressing for me, but thankfully as soon as the next aid station approached, I was able to grab some water, swirl that around my mouth. I was able to swallow some of it, and that just absolutely just helped my throat. And I think actually I might have just like coughed and kind of like semi-swallowed some Morton, and it got stuck somewhere or something, but I just didn't feel good while that was there. But thankfully this sensation actually only lasted like 15 minutes, and by the time that I got to around 30k, this whole, I guess, sensation had actually subsided, and I was able to finish that gel. But then I kind of run into another issue, because that gel had taken me so long to consume, that one Morton gel, that I was already at the window that I know I needed to take my Morton caffeine gel by. And Tony had actually warned me that taking the caffeine gel too late in the race kind of wouldn't have its desired effect, because caffeine takes a little while to be absorbed into the system and to kick in. So the plan was to take the Morton at 28k, but I'd just finished this other Morton gel at like 28.5. So it's like, oh, do I want to take another gel on straight away? I decided to do it because I had another BIX out on course. I drank that BIX, I was feeling good. I'd finished this other gel, and I thought, let's just do it, let's crack open the caffeine. And at this point, pace is absolutely great. I'm still hitting those late sort of 350Ks, bang on schedule, pretty much running on my own, but feeling good. And it was at this point that I started to approach quite a few of the half marathoners that had started about an hour after us full marathon runners, and a few 10k runners that had just started. And it was quite nice because I was weaving around people, but I think this kind of didn't help to the situation that I found myself in as I started to consume that Morton caffeine gel, and that was nausea just came on again. And it was so strange because it almost felt like I was seasick or car sick, and it just felt like the motion wasn't really helping. So as I was weaving around people, it just didn't feel good. So I kind of decided at this point I just need to get this Morton in, because it's already taken me so long to, you know, have that other gel before. I don't want to just run into a wall and then all my carbs hit like after I've gone through that wall, if that makes sense. So I took on this caffeine gel and I didn't feel good. I got to say, I felt very nauseous. I really just had a sense that I could have been sick at any moment. But I was able to get through that. Again, that only lasted probably about 15 minutes. And I was able to come out the other end. And then at this point, I had about 10K to go. So I had been prescribed a, I guess, pace plan by Tony that was 16K at that kind of easy end of my marathon pace, 16K at a faster but easy kind of steady marathon pace window, and then 10K at the end of the race at kind of a all-out send it pace. So I knew for me that all-out pace was going to be low 350s, and I got my head down and I started to work away at that pace. But I will say that as soon as I started to do so, I did feel like my body just started to get a little bit irritated. And what I forgot to mention was that actually at around halfway point, when I felt that slight sicky feeling, I did actually feel like a headache was coming on. And it wasn't really like a pounding headache or a sharp headache in any way. It was more of like a brain freeze. It was really quite strange. And I felt that throughout my sinuses, throughout my head, and it just felt really odd. But that had set in, and when I pushed the pace, I did feel like my head started to hurt a little bit more, and just a little bit of that nausea just started to creep back in. But it didn't deter me from keeping up my cadence, and I actually had one of my fields on my watch set to my average pace of the entire run, and it was around the 34K mark that I saw that figure switch from a 4-minute kilometre exactly average for the whole run, which would have put me nicely at about the 250 mark. I saw that flip down to 359 per kilometre average for the entire run, which I knew was 248 if I ran the course accurately, not long in any way. So I was really, really happy to see that, and that really motivated me. Actually, like, I'm like 8K from the finish at this point, 34K. It was a lapped course, so I basically knew exactly where I was going to be running next, and I knew that that was a nice bit of the course. I enjoyed that part. We had gone through the town already, and we'd actually approached the I guess what you would call like the river or like the harbour in town, running along this beautiful boardwalk, only for like a kilometre or so, but just running on wood was just like a really nice I guess break in that monotony of running on pavements and on trails. But as we approached kind of that last 8K, I really felt confident to get my head down and put in a good effort. Now looking back at the splits, there's nothing too crazy during the last 8K, but I got to say, momentum wise, I felt like I was flying, and I certainly didn't have any lack of energy, and I have to thank the Morton gels for this. I just felt like I was able to get on all of those carbs nice and early on, and actually as we approached the end I wasn't feeling any fatigue, to be honest, in the legs. Apart from that slight nausea and headache I mentioned, I felt like my training had really it was showing its success. Essentially all of those long runs and interval sessions I put in really were starting to show. So got my head down and enjoyed just that last, I guess, 5 or 6K as we were approaching the 40K mark. And it was at this point that something quite funny and unexpected happened during the race. And that was that I saw the person that was behind me, and I saw that he was approaching really fast. So I wasn't actually sure where I was in terms of the men's field during this race. I'd overtaken a few guys, but I don't think any of them really looked about my age, and I was pretty confident that I was going to win my age group. However, the guy behind me, I kind of caught a quick glimpse of him, and I was like, oh God, I can't really tell how old he is. And if he's under 30, that means that he's in the same age group, and he's running quite fast. So if he overtakes me, you know, he's going to win the age group, and that's something that I really wanted to do. I didn't have that expectation before the race. I just really wanted to go for it, and I was pretty confident that there was no one ahead of me in the 20s. So I was like, oh, this is quite interesting. Let's go for it. Saw this guy behind me catching, and I'd only seen him because there was kind of an out and back on course. And as I came back, I then saw a marathon blue bib, and I thought, oh god, he's catching me. So at that point, that really gave me the motivation I needed to put my head down and kick. And if you guys use Strava, you can go back and see my splits. And at this point, I ran a 3:45 kilometer on the 42nd kilometer of the race. So that is by far my quickest closing K in any marathon. Yeah, don't know how I really pulled that off, to be honest, because that's my half marathon pace. Definitely threshold, and yeah, quite unbelievable that I was managed to pull that out at the end of a marathon. Something I'm really proud of, to be honest, and probably a nice precursor to whatever my next challenge is. That's kind of, I guess, the kind of pace that I know I can pull off late in a marathon, so that's quite an exciting prospect. But I got my head down, and I've got to say that at this point in a marathon, nothing's going to feel easy. Like, it's definitely going to be hard, but this, I think, is where my training and all of my coaches' expertise really just show their true colours, because I felt so good. I honestly, of course I was hurting, but I felt so strong, and I was smiling, and the support from the crowd was brilliant. And it was the first time in a marathon that I haven't approached the finish line with this overwhelming amount of exhaustion / emotion / breakdown, physically and mentally. I just felt so strong, and as I approached that finishing straight, I was so pumped up, and I was shouting, "Come on, Scott! Like, let's go!" All of those things, I think, just to ride that adrenaline high. I really love that at the end of a race, and I was able to really pick up the pace, get it going, and we brought the finish in, and I saw on the clock that it was around the 48-minute mark. So I was absolutely delighted to see shortly after that my official time was 2 hours, 48 minutes and 14 seconds. Absolutely elated, and I finished in 6th place overall, first in my age group. So I won the under 30s race. I was really, really happy with that. And out of a field of about 170 marathon runners, I was so incredibly pleased to finish 6th. That's just, that means so much to me. Really, really happy about that. So after the race, quite honestly, it was quite anticlimactic in terms of how my body was feeling. I was actually able to jog in DK's race with him. I say jog, it was definitely more of a sprint. DK absolutely showed up, smashed his previous marathon time, and ran a great PB. So really, really proud to have done that with DK and to finish the race with him also. And the rest of the day, to be honest, yesterday we spent in the car driving home, but it was just, my legs definitely felt fine. Like, there's no sense of pain. I'm not feeling like I'm injured in any way, as I've felt in previous marathons coming across that finish line. And yeah, just generally just feeling really good. Now, I have to say that today, of course, waking up, I do feel like I've been hit by a bus, and I feel like this is always to be expected after a marathon finish, especially one that you've gone all out in. But to be sitting here today, a 2:48 marathoner, bearing in mind only 4 or 5 months ago I ran a 2:58 in Melbourne. That was a huge PB at the time, and it's still a fantastic marathon time. And I felt so bad after that race. As soon as I finished, I was almost in so much pain that it kind of put me off the idea of running a marathon anytime soon. And to have run 10 minutes quicker just 4 months later, and to feel like semi-okay, was just crazy. Like, that is a true testament to the training and to the coaching that I've received. And I have to say that I have trained so hard in the last year since I started my first ever marathon training block for Brighton in April of last year. And I ran an amazing race that day, 3 hours 45 seconds at my first ever marathon. And for that marathon, I put in a whole heap of work. For the next marathon in Adelaide, I came back from injury. I worked with a physio. I trained so hard, and I took off 45 seconds. For my next marathon in Melbourne, it was a slightly shorter period, but I definitely put in work. And I paid that money to fly over to Melbourne and to have that whole experience to run that marathon. And I took off another, about a minute of my marathon time. So in my first year of marathon training, I was able to take off essentially 2 minutes. And I'd invested a good deal of time and money into these experiences, and they were fantastic. Don't get me wrong, I'm so grateful that my marathon, finishing times it's been a trajectory that's only gone up. It's been fantastic. And every step along the way has shown progress. But I have to say that since working with Tony, since October last year, to knock off 10 minutes of my marathon time in 4 months is absolutely ridiculous. I knocked off 2 minutes in a whole year, and then I was able to knock off 10 minutes in 4 months. Like, that to me is unbelievable. And what's almost even more unbelievable is that Tony reassured me that I could do this at the start of the plan. And I always loved Tony's confidence, and he's been able to support me through so many sessions that I said before that I'm not sure I was able to complete. He instilled that confidence in me that actually, yeah, you can do this, you know. And on that start line in Port Fairy, I just had no doubt that I could. So 10 minutes in 4 months, you know, take from that what you will. I am over the moon to have worked with Tony, and to be fortunate enough to have his support has just been absolutely incredible. And if you've ever, I guess, had that same contemplation that I've had in the past, is paying for a coach, seeking a coach, at least finding the one that's right for you, is all of that process worth it? You decide for yourself, because I was self-coached. I always have been up until I've worked with Tony, and yeah, knocked 2 minutes off my marathon time, which is great. I'm so proud of myself that I was able to self-coach to a sub 3 hour marathon. That was brilliant. I was able to finish a marathon in the first place self-coached. That alone is a big endeavour. But you know, if you're serious and you want to get those times down quickly, I do think that of course, it seems like the simple option. Simple if you've got the obviously financial ability, but I can't stress enough that I do feel like this has been transformative for my running journey, and that does kind of change things for me moving forward. I have said in the past that I do this for fun, and that is the absolute fundamental of why I run. And of course this channel, I'm just sharing my experience, sharing what I enjoy. Hopefully, you know, sharing helpful things with you guys that help your journeys move forward. But for me, with, I guess, this marathon finish that I've just had, I feel so motivated to not only chase the next goal, but just keep up this trajectory. I think, you know, I'm 25 years old, and I know that I've got so much time to do this. I don't feel any rush, but I do feel like I finished that race with so much left yesterday, and I want to see what I can do. To pull off a 3:45 kilometre on the 42nd K, I had so much left in me. I really could have brought that home even quicker at the end, had I known how much I had in me. So I don't know when the next marathon will be, but wherever it is, I'm gonna push it hard, and I'm absolutely buzzing for it, I have to say. So for all of you that have taken the time to watch this video, I know it's been a long one, thank you all so much. And honestly, the support that I've received throughout this whole training plan over the last 4 months has just been amazing. Honestly, all of the interactions on Instagram, on Strava, and especially here on YouTube has just been absolutely fantastic. I should announce that the winner of the giveaway of this training series is Gavin here on YouTube. Well done, Gavin. You pretty much correctly guessed my marathon finishing time, which is pretty crazy. He was like, I think 1 second out. So yeah, pretty unreal, to be honest. But yeah, well done, Gavin. I will be doing more of these giveaways in the future, because I find it just like really interesting. People leaving their guesses based on, I guess, what they've seen in my training, or even just what they think I'm capable of in general. So yeah, really interesting, and thank you for everyone who's taken part in that. But yeah, just as we end this video, I just want to say a massive thank you to the sponsors of this entire training series. It's been BIX Hydration and the Tony Smith Running Club. Honestly, wouldn't have been able to do it without either of these guys. And I'm so incredibly grateful to have had these guys on board throughout the whole block and plan, because it's just, yeah, been amazing to have that support. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Are you training for a marathon, or have you just ran a marathon yourself? What's your goals, and how are you feeling about your future races? Of course, this whole channel, this whole, I guess, training series is about sharing my experience, and if there's anything that I can offer you guys, please just let me know any questions down in the comments. I'd happily answer anything to do with breaking sub 250 for the marathon, or anything nutrition wise. Yeah, just let me know down below. I'm all about sharing my experience, and if I can help anyone, I'm more than happy to. But as always, thank you all dearly for watching, and for the last time, I'll wrap off this training series with our mantra that I did use throughout the marathon several times, which is best is love, test the gov. I am going to go and have a well-deserved alcohol-free beer and a lay in the bath, I think, because yeah, I can't really walk at the moment, and anything that helps me walk a little bit better is going to be welcome. So, goodbye from me. I think my family is coming over to say goodbye now. Myth, you going to say goodbye to everyone? I think that's her saying goodbye in her own way. But yeah, more importantly, she wants me to throw the ball for her. Look at the state of this t-shirt. I put this on clean. In a bloody dirty tennis ball. Oh well. I hope that you all appreciated seeing family in the video. Hope it was worth it. There is the Port Fairy beautiful, sustainable, recycled wooden medallion to prove that I finished it. And yeah, 2:48. What can I say? Well, the title of the training series, the Sub 250 Port Fairy Ferry. We did it, folks. Thank you all so much. See you for the next one, whenever that may be. Oh, come on, Nick.